Hello and welcome to Run It Back on the Raptors Republic Network. I'm your host, Zulfi Sheikh, and I'm here joined by Kyle Ramnarine. We're here to recap another week of Raptors action. And I know what you're thinking. It hasn't been a week, it's been two. Well, the holidays came and they're still kind of here, but it's been really busy. We hope everyone got to enjoy some time with their loved ones, and if not, still enjoy a bit of a break. So that's what we did. But we're back because a lot of Raptors action happened during that time. And I'd be burying the lead if I didn't mention one of the biggest pieces of Raptors news. OG ANUNOBY, Precious Achiuwa, and Malachi Flynn have been traded to the New York Knicks for Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and a second-round pick via Detroit. And I know we have a lot to go over, and we're going to talk about that trade in a bit, but there's also games that were played during that time, so we have to recap that as well. So with all that being said, I think it's now time to run it back. All right, it's been 2 weeks, so a lot to cover, but don't worry, we won't dive into every game too deep. Not much positive to go over anyways, unfortunately. So we're going to go 2 weeks back when the Raptors took on Charlotte, and they took care of business, picking up a 114-99 win. Good to see the team beat the Hornets after losing to them earlier in the year. Now, after that, Toronto took on Denver and Philly, and in those games, they basically showed that the Raptors aren't at a level where they can compete with top dogs. Sorry, I know the word dog is a little sensitive right now. Patrick Beverley has used that against the Raptors, but unfortunately, it was true. Toronto was outmatched basically wire to wire as they lost both of these games. And then the Raptors took on the Utah Jazz at home, and it was looking like an easy dub against a bottom barrel squad, but then Toronto realized they were also a bottom barrel team and fell apart. The Raptors got outscored by 20 in the fourth quarter and crumbled as they let Jordan Clarkson score 16 of his 30 points in the final frame. Toronto choked a 17-point lead and found yet another way to lose a basketball game, 126-119 the final. That was the last 2 weeks. And now we go back to this week. Raptors began a 3-game road trip in Washington to take on the Wizards, and they made light work of the 6-win team. A 30-point victory is always nice to see, but the main storyline was actually the fact that Toronto made a lineup change. Coach Darko Rajakovic, after weeks of people asking him to do something new, inserted Gary Trent Jr. into the starting lineup and sent Dennis Schroeder to the bench. And it paid dividends in the victory, as GTJ had one of his best games of the year, and Schroeder managed to bench and drop 10 dimes, the most assists off the bench since Lowry did it in 2013. That's a throwback. Now, former Raptor, that feels weird to say, OG ANUNOBY, dropped 26 points to lead the team in that one, while Scotty Barnes and Pascal each had 20-point double-doubles. Then the Raptors visited Boston next, and it was looking pretty ugly early on. Despite the Celtics missing 3 of their top 6 players in Jason Tatum, Kristaps Porzingis, and Al Horford, they were making light work of Toronto. The Raptors, for some reason, tried to get into a shootout with the best three-point shooting team in the league, and spoiler alert, they weren't winning that battle. Well, the team wasn't, but Scotty was. Barnes hit 7 of his 15 three-point attempts in the loss, both career highs. Your boy Scotty continues to just let it fly and knock him down this season. He even finished with 30 points, but alas, Toronto went down as many as 20 points and went into the fourth down 13. And then we got the Jalen McDaniels legacy game. No, seriously. Pirtle was getting cooked by Luke Cornett, of all people, for most of the night, so Darko went spawn ball and put Jalen in at the 5, and it worked. McDaniels locked up defensively and also went bananas on offense. He scored 8 of the Raptors' first 10 points in the fourth quarter and dropped all 13 of his season high in the final frame. The Raptors started the quarter on a 23-8 run, and McDaniels' triple gave them a 3-point lead with less than 3 minutes to go. Unfortunately, that's all the gas they had, as the Raptors couldn't muster a basket after that point, just one field goal made from there, and a couple late missed free throws meant the Raptors' comeback fell just short. 120-118 the final. Raptors are now losers of 7 straight against the Boston Celtics and still haven't beat a divisional opponent this season. And we end things off in Detroit the very next day on the second night of a back-to-back. And if you didn't know, the Pistons were in the midst of a 28 straight losing streak, tied for the most consecutive losses in NBA history, and it was up to the Raptors to hand them their record-setting 29th loss. For what it's worth, this game happened hours after the news of the OG trade broke, so emotions were probably all over the place for some guys, and the Raptors were now down 3 players. Regardless, they were taking on a team that won 2 games all season, and the Raptors frankly didn't show up. Well, correction, the Raptors bench didn't show up. Alec Burks off the bench for the Pistons outscored the entire Raptors bench by himself with 16 points. The Raptors bench put up 12. 4 out of the 5 starters for Toronto put up 20-plus points, and they still lost. Siakam did just about everything offensively for the team through 3 quarters, even putting up a 20-point third quarter, having 35 on the night. And in the fourth, Scotty even popped off a little bit, doing most of his damage after having an otherwise quiet night for Scotty's sake. And hilariously, the offense wasn't even nearly the worst part. It was their defense. Toronto led the league's 28th ranked offense, put up 129 points on their head, and shot 50% from the field and 43% from three. Well, it would have been a loss that set the record for most consecutive losses in NBA and North American sports history, turned into a win-stop party in Detroit as Toronto became the team to snap the streak. All right, that was a lot that happened. Now to recap the last 2 weeks, 2 wins, 5 losses, an overall record of 12-20 now, and 12th place in the Eastern Conference. And Kyle, let's forget about everything else. How bad was that Pistons loss in your opinion?
I generally think that was probably top 3 most embarrassing Raptors losses in history. I saw a couple tweets behind the 81-point game, behind the DeMar daughter screaming gate. It was horrible, and I immediately was waiting for the Will Lou reaction pod. I just wanted to see what he had to say about this, and he was frying these guys. He's making some valid points, like 5-10 years from now, when people talk about this Pistons losing streak, right, and they talk about how it came to an end, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, the Raptors just came in at 3 a.m. They were jet lagged. They were down a couple players. They're just going to see that the Raptors lost this game. That's what all people are going to talk about. You have to find a way to make this win happen. Like, again, I know Siakam popped off in this game. He had 30 plus points, but again, majority of those points happened in the third quarter. And for the first quarter, he wasn't finishing that much at the rim. It was rolling over the rim. He was finishing strong. He wasn't drawing the fouls. Scotty was having an off game until the fourth. And this is great, but we need more people to show up besides Dennis, Scotty, and Siakam. And those were happening even late in terms of Scotty. We need a bench. You have to get this win. This is, again, you said it yourself. This is one of the worst offenses in the league, and they're shooting 50% from the field. I swear the Raptors have one of the best defensive teams in the league as well, too. Again, we're down OG ANUNOBY. I know that. But if the Jazz can beat this team with a borderline G League team, we can get this done. We honestly should be able to get this done. I don't think it's going to require like a god tier effort from all our players to get this done. You just have to lock in from the start, say, you know what, we don't want to be that team. Come in with the effort, come in with the aggressiveness, and right off the bat, just set the tone immediately. Bro, I don't know. What do you think about the whole performance in general?
Yeah, I think that last part really spoke to it. Whereas one of those things where throw all the numbers and statistics and everything out the window, and it's a pride thing a little bit too, right? Do you want to be the team that ended that streak? Do you want to have that on your resume this season? And I'm sure the Raptors didn't, but they weren't particularly playing like that. Again, it was the bench that wasn't. 12 points from your bench, and I get it. Guys who might regularly be there aren't there now, but Precious Achiuwa and Malachi Flynn were basically out of the rotation. So the guys who are in here, other than maybe Thad Young, were probably still going to be in here. Jalen McDaniels, you had a really good game 2 games ago against the Celtics. And against the Pistons, you looked hapless out there. He had a couple, I think Will Lou even tweeted it, where they left him in just a little too long because he had those turnovers and that foul late. And it was it kind of swung everything again in the momentum towards the Pistons. So it was weird to see. And then the coaching, again, was just 2 games in a row. I'm starting to not lose faith in Darko Rajakovic, but it's looking really dicey right now for him. The Celtics game, the game plan didn't make sense to me at all, trying to outshoot Boston. And then in this game, there was just some decisions with your rotations and guys staying in too long and stuff like that, where I just didn't know if that made a ton of sense. The whole Pascal and Scotty being out in the fourth, I get trying to give them a rest at the second out of back-to-back, but you were about to lose to the Detroit Pistons. Put your best guys back in there. I'm sorry. And Grady Dick not playing at all in this game, I get he hasn't been great, but hey, you could probably use a bit more shooting when you're down 3 guys. So why isn't Grady Dick playing? Why is a 38, 40-year-old Thad Young getting in there more than Grady Dick? And maybe that's an indictment on Grady, but I still don't understand why he's not getting any run in that game. So I just think the coaching of it all was a little problematic as well. But again, everything goes out the window. This team has lost. The Pistons have won just 2 games. That's a team you should be able to beat with 2 all-star caliber players, because the Pistons have one, maybe if you call Cade an all-star caliber player, and some may debate that, I don't think that's a debate. He's a pretty good player, but they just have one of those. You have 2 guys who are like that. You have 4 great vets. You have Dennis Schroeder, who plays really well. Jakob Poeltl should have been playing really well. Gary Trent Jr. had a pretty good game, all things considered. So you can have your entire starting lineup, 4 out of the 5 guys score over 20 points and still lose. That just doesn't make sense unless you guys just aren't putting in an effort on the other end. And defensively, they weren't. It was unfortunate to see, quite honestly. It was just a bad effort overall on defense.
it was generally like horrible to watch. Like just looking at their bench right now, you had Boucher 17 minutes, 4 points. Jalen McDaniel 17 minutes, 2 points. Thaddeus Young 11 minutes, 6 points. Otto Porter 8 minutes, 0 points. Like what are we doing as a bench that you need to provide at least some help too? And Will actually made a good point too. Like he said, Jakob started the game like really well, like really nice, but he can't be our engine. He can't be our engine. Scotty or Siakam has to be our engine, and we have to set the tone. Like what was interesting too, because I agree with you that they should have gave Brady like at least some playing time. But what was weird is that Will said that was a good decision on Darko's part, but I disagree with that. I think in this game at least you got to give Grady some minutes. You got to let him play at least. I don't know, like it's better than Otto Porter out there getting cardio. It's better than like Jalen McDaniels out there doing nothing. And we got the best. What is crazy to me is like we got the best possible games we could get from guys like Dennis Schroeder, from guys like Gary Trent Jr., and we still lost, which is insane to me. Like Gary Trent is not doing that for you like every night, every single night. This is
He didn't do it against the Celtics. He looked awful
exactly.
against the Celtics. So when you get a good night like that, take advantage of it.
How are you gonna waste it? It's just I don't know. Like I'm not gonna be one to rush and judge and jump to like, oh, the fire Darko train. I know a lot of people are on that train already, but to me right now, it's just like we're seeing a lot of questionable lineup decisions, game time decisions, and I'm just sitting here scratching my head because at what point do you realize in this game like we have to win this game? We have to win this game. This is a must win for us. You got to come in here with at least a game 7 mindset. The bench is clearly not working. We gotta try something new. I don't know, like are you on that wave yet when it comes to Darko, or are you just gonna be like, let's give him the season at least?
Look, I'm always going to be the proponent of coaches, especially young new coaches, need to be
Mhm.
given time to go through growing pains. And I still stick with that. I think you have to have a patient mentality with a young coach because he's learning just like everyone else.
Mhm.
But I will say again, the last 2 games specifically have been games for me where I'm like, this just isn't good for you, Darko.
Mhm.
Like you're not making the right decisions. You're adjusting poorly to situations happening in real time, and hopefully he can get better at that over time. It's just right now that isn't a skill that we're seeing him like execute properly. Again, I'm going back to the Celtics game. Why are you trying to outshoot the best 3-point shooting team in the
Mhm.
league? Why aren't you taking advantage of your like mismatches inside? You have a Dennis Schroeder waving off Pascal Siakam in the post in that game. Why is that happening?
Like,
Pascal Siakam has Peyton Pritchard on him, who is
mhm.
like markedly shorter than him. You have KP, Al Horford, and Jason Tatum out. 3 really tall guys who like to play inside defensively as well. Like those guys are out. The interior is open for you, but they weren't able to take advantage of that. Those are coaching things. Your
Mhm.
coach has to come out and say that. Your coach has to be on you about that kind of stuff. And when he's not, and this coaching staff isn't, it's an indictment of them. It's not
Mhm.
a good look overall. So I think I'm not going to say fire the guy yet. It's been 30 games into him being a head coach, so let's relax on that part. But he needs to know that like there has to be like things being shown in terms of adjustment. And some people said it. The small ball lineup by Darko did work towards the end of that Celtics game. That's
Mhm.
good. But then it's one of those things where in this game, he's like, okay, let me try it again. It worked one time. And then when it's not working, he let it go too long.
Mhm.
He didn't like adjust quickly enough. He's not reacting fast enough. And I think that's more of a thing than him not doing anything in terms of adjustments. He's made changes to be fair to him. When we wanted a lineup change, he did it. When they were talking about playing Otto Porter Jr. earlier more, he did that.
Mhm.
The problem with all these things is he does it way too late.
Yeah.
He does it like well after people have already asked for it. So that's the problem. He needs to get on these things a bit faster and adjust a bit quicker. When that starts happening, we're really going to see the improvements come, I think.
Exactly too, and like what is concerning me too is like I don't know if you saw Dennis Schroeder's like post game comments, about the team, about buying in. Like it was a subtle quote, but it was a loud quote as well because he's like at this point he's like I'm not feeling like what I was feeling on Team Germany. He's like everyone there was kind of like we ride out for each other. We're in this together, but he's like I'm still not feeling it here. So that kind of concerns me when it comes to the team. Like that is are we having chemistry issues? Is there not something like are people not buying in? Do people not believe in Darko? Are people not trusting Darko? And what's wild too, what just reminded me too, when I was listening to the reaction pod too, Will literally came on and said he was watching, I think it was like a training session or whatever. For whenever these guys get minutes, like Jalen McDaniels, Thad Young, who don't necessarily play, right? They do things called get ready games, and they play against like the assistant coaches. And Will said the assistant coach was hooping against these players, which is very concerning to me. If the assistant coach is playing better, I don't know what's going on with the team right now, and I guess it's gonna lead into when we talk about like next against the OG trade. But again, the OG was just the start. Big things need to happen for this team. If this isn't the biggest wake up call to Masai, and whenever the press conference does happen, Masai needs to address it, not Bobby, not the players.
Yeah.
Masai needs to address it. He needs to talk and he needs to give proper answers because truly this was an embarrassing loss and you can't shy away from it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like it was an embarrassing loss. It was not a loss that you should have taken. In terms of like the Dennis Schroeder quote, I do find it interesting because the fact that he was willing to mention it, but then right after he said like I'm not going to dive into it. It's kind of like okay, I threw it out there. Let you guys can speculate over it because he doesn't want to throw anybody under the bus. Is saying something. I think it's interesting and hard when you have a team where you don't really have a definitive like vocal leader. Like Dennis Schroeder could be that guy because you know he has in the past for other teams, but he just got there, so it's hard for him to do it, and he's figuring out as well. You have a new head coach who's hasn't done this long. It's obviously his first job. Maybe he doesn't want to be that guy either. Pascal Siakam and Scotty Barnes are really good players, but they're kind of like your on-court guys. Not many of them. I don't think any of them are known for being like a vocal like leader to put people in place and hold people accountable. Kyle Lowry was that guy. Aiden Moss from Raptors Republic. He just put out a story about like the Raptors not actually having any dogs, like Patrick Beverly talked about, and he's kind of right in the sense that they don't have a Kyle Lowry, they don't have a PJ Tucker, they don't have a Draymond Green, one of those guys who can kind of set people straight and into their roles. So when you have guys who are fighting for roles and fighting for opportunities in Malachi Flynn and Precious Achiuwa before they got traded, and then you have Jalen McDaniels who just got signed here, who's trying to figure out his spot as well. Like, I'm not surprised they wouldn't be rooting for each other because hell, Jalen McDaniels is probably like looking at Otto Porter and Precious Achiuwa and Malachi Flynn and those guys, and is like, yo, those are minutes I want. Like, why am I rooting for that guy to do better? And say what you want about the attitude for it, but he's playing for a career in the NBA, so I'm not totally surprised. When you don't have a guy like a Kyle Lowry to check that and put you in your place, like this is what's going to happen. You're going to have an environment that like sounds really good, that the vibes are different than when Fred and Nick Nurse were here, but like people are still going to be fighting for their opportunities, and it's not going to go well if you don't have leadership to keep it straight.
And that's what I'm saying too. Like everyone has to buy in, and this is at the end of the day, it is up to Darko as the coach of this team to get your players in check, right? Isn't that why everyone was giving Doc Rivers a hard time because he lost control of the locker room at one point? And like at a point, you have to have everyone buying into the system. We can't be going into January with players still talking about we got to buy into the system. Like we need players to come under, like just be as a unit. Like I get they're all playing for minutes and they're all playing for their own careers too, which is dangerous as well because again it creates that competitive nature that they're not flowing as a unit. But again, like it comes down to winning games and playing as a cohesive unit. So I think it comes down to Darko, and I think you have to have a specified leader either Siakam or Scotty. This be like, okay, they're the guy. They take control of this team. Whatever they say goes. Or we just need a kind of veteran presence. You know, a lot of people want to clown on Udonis Haslem, saying he just rides the bench, but that guy was a veteran presence for the Miami Heat. You know, he kept those guys in check. Every team needs one of those guys. I don't know who the Raptors could possibly get because again, all these guys are still young. All these guys, the oldest would probably be Siakam with the most experience at least.
Well, that is because they technically do have that. They have Thad Young, Garrett Temple out there as well. Again, Siakam's a vet in this league. Dennis Schroeder's a vet. Jakob Poeltl's older, but like you have Garrett Temple, Thad Young, and Otto Porter Jr. who technically should be the veterans of the team. But who knows how vocal of leaders they really are in terms of keeping people in check and accountability.
Yeah.
And to your point, like Siakam and Scotty Barnes being those guys would be fantastic, but like they have to also want to be those kind of guys.
Yeah,
you can't force it. Like like if I went up to Kawhi Leonard and I was a coach, I was like, Kawhi, you have to be a vocal leader. You have to hold people in check. Do you think he's going to do that? Probably not. Kawhi leads by being on the court. Why do you think it works so well with Kyle Lowry? Because Kyle Lowry was that
vocal guy. Yeah.
Like, and I keep bringing it back to him, but it's the truth. Like Kyle and DeMar is a perfect example. DeMar's not the guy who's going to be demonstrative and hold you in check and call you out, but Kyle Lowry absolutely is. So the balance worked perfectly. The Raptors need a guy like that. And again, clown Patrick Beverly all you want. I did it too, but he's kind of right that they need a dog. They need a guy to be that leader. And I don't think that they don't have people who can be that. They just currently don't. Like Dennis Schroeder, again, I think he could be that guy, but he just got here.
Yeah.
If a guy who just got here is going to start doing that, do you think it's going to be well received? Probably not.
He probably feels like it's not his place either, too. And like I don't think maybe even guys like Otto Porter and Thad Young, they're just like, listen, it's not up to me type thing, or no one wants to go and take that role, step up to that role too. Because again, especially with people saying that not all the players are on the same team. Like, imagine if Dennis came out immediately, started taking that vocal role, and everyone like, well, who are you?
Yeah,
Like you just
exactly.
signed to this team. So I don't know what's got to happen. And again, too, like maybe we need to let Scotty like determine things on the court. Scotty Rusia can be that guy on the court, and then we get a more locker room presence. But I don't know who that could be right now, at least.
Yeah, I think that's a big question, and we're gonna see. We'll get into it a bit with the OG Anunoby trade, but like maybe there's more moves to happen for this Raptors team, and we can talk about what we think about that. But the last thing I'll say on this Pistons loss, and I'm gonna like again, we're going into the new year, so let's try to be a little positive. I'll try to put a positive spin on this a little bit. I know Will Lou said this idea of like 20 years from now, 10 years from now, they're not going to think about the circumstances. They're not going to remember how the Raptors lost, just the fact that the Raptors lost to this Pistons team. I'm going to take an opposite approach to that. I don't think anyone outside of Toronto is going to remember who the Pistons beat.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Pistons tied the record with Philadelphia, right? And then Philadelphia lost 28 straight games. Who did Philadelphia beat to beat that streak? Maybe a couple people in Philly know, but do we know? I know I don't. Do you know?
That's true.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So like, yes, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing right now. Take it for what it is. It's a really bad loss. But let's not dwell on this and act like 15 years from now, the NBA like scene or the NBA crowd is going to remember that the Raptors were the one that snapped this. They're just going to remember the Pistons were a really bad team and they lost 28 straight games. Like, don't make this embarrassment in the moment like a really, really big thing that it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
It's kind of my way of looking at it. Like, no, I'm telling you, people are outside of Toronto are not going to remember this. And people in Toronto, sure, remember that the Raptors were part of this. But at the end of the day, the Pistons are probably going to win a couple more games this season. Not a lot, but a couple more. The Pistons won 2 games to start this season before the streak. You think people are clowning the 2 teams that they beat before this streak happened? Yeah, I don't think people really remember that either, to be quite honest. So I don't think we need to blow this out of proportion. Use it as a wake-up call for right now. Use it to make yourselves motivated to do better, but don't dwell on it, is my point. If you dwell on it, it's going to dwindle fast. It's going to spiral out of control, both for the players and coaches and for the fan base. So don't let this be the defining moment of the season because it just really shouldn't be. And I promise you, like, give it not even like a month, and most fans aren't going to really be talking about this a whole lot. And give it a year, and most fans are going to forget who the Pistons beat to snap the streak. At least that's where I look at it. So I'm going to challenge this idea that it's going down in history or infamy forever, because it's just not. That's not how the NBA works. There's always going to be another storyline and another team. And yes, this can add to a list of moments when the Raptors have been memed, sure. But again, that's part of playing basketball. It's part of being in the NBA. Things like that happen. Every fan base, every franchise has those moments in their history. So like dwelling on it is going to do nobody any good, is my point.
Yeah, that's true. I honestly, I can see from what you're trying to say as well too. Like, I think we're probably blowing it out of proportion too as well, because it just happened. It's very recent, and we're just a little bit upset too. Like, in the long run, I don't think we're really going to be crying about it. Like, I even saw a tweet this morning, like when the score tweeted out something like, "Oh, Raptors fans still upset out over last night," and most of the comments are like, "We're already over it." Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, we're already over it. So,
and a lot of Raptors fans seem to predict it coming, right? And like that's funny and a little painful, honestly, that they saw it coming. But it's just true. Like, you saw it coming, it happened, it sucks. It's, again, use it as motivation and then move forward from it. Dwelling on it is going to do nobody any good. So I think that is the best way to look at it. And again, being positive, moving out of the situation. The Raptors are about to start a new journey with some of the player movement that's about to happen. So I think that's the best way to go about it. And so I think that's a really good spot to wrap up the conversation on the actual on-court action. But now we're going to move into something a bit more important to talk about, which was this massive Raptors trade. Time for another bit of crazy Raptors news to recap. As you're all probably aware by now, the Raptors traded away OG Anunoby, Precious Achiuwa, and Malachi Flynn to the New York Knicks for Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and a second-round pick via Detroit. For what it's worth, OG Anunoby was a UFA. He had a player option that he wasn't going to opt into and become an unrestricted free agent. And Precious Achiuwa and Malachi Flynn are restricted free agents. On the other side, Emmanuel Quickley is also a restricted free agent this offseason, but RJ Barrett is under contract for quite some time now. And Kyle, initial reactions to this trade?
I'm loving it, actually. I would really enjoy it. Like, I'm sad to see OG go. You know, he is, again, probably was our best defender on the team, but I think it was time for a change. Honestly, like, again, it sucks. It sucks that we have to say bye to OG, but I think we needed it. I think we needed guys like RJ. I think we needed Quickly. Don't know what we're gonna end up doing with the pick, but it is what it is. RJ is going to give us some good. I mean, like right now he's averaging around like 18.6 points. He's going to give us some decent shooting. Again, the defense isn't there, but the scoring is there. I say his scoring is better than OG. Quickly, I don't know if we're going to slide quickly into that starting PG role, or if we're going to put Dennis on the bench, if we're going to put Dennis starting and then him off the bench. But right now, I just like it because it's the start of somewhat of a direction. It's somewhat like we're moving towards something. I think we'll see what's going to happen later on if they sign Siakam to an extension or if they're going to trade him. I think that really determines what we're doing. But right off the bat, I'm just happy to see some movement here. I don't know about you, but what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of see it a bit as a win-win for both teams, and we can
Hmm.
get into what the guys going to New York are going to do for them. But Emmanuel quickly was a target for a lot of people for the Toronto Raptors. The reason being is like versus getting draft picks, you get a young asset that kind of matches Scotty Barnes' timeline that can work with him. He's known as being a shifty creator. He
Hmm.
works inside with his floater game really well. He's a good 3-point shooter. Again, he can create offense for himself. He's a great pick and roll partner, which is going to be interesting to see what he can do with Jakob Poeltl and Scotty Barnes in that sense. So I think it matches the timeline perfectly. And ironically, RJ Barrett, Canadian by the way, which obviously
Hmm.
does help, is younger than Emmanuel quickly. So I find it funny that people have kind of said that RJ Barrett is what he is in the NBA when he's younger and he still has tons of time to
Hmm.
develop into something. He has been better as a shooter this year. He's great on corner threes. The rest of his he shoots about 33%, so it's not anything fantastic, but better
Hmm.
than a lot of people in the Raptors, that's for sure. His spacing is going to be a bit of a concern at times, and defensively he can get a bit lost. But he's known to be a versatile player. For Team
Hmm.
Canada, he was a versatile defender for the most part. So I think that's interesting as well. The second round pick is nice because it's from Detroit, so basically a late first round pick if you look at it. So
Hmm.
that'll be fun. But I think it's a win-win overall. And the best way I look at it, there's two things that make me look at this as a really good trade for the Raptors. One, you took an unrestricted free agent and two restricted free agents. One in OG Anunoby that it sounded like he wasn't gonna probably stay because he wanted more of a role or a
Hmm.
max deal. Both weren't likely from the Raptors. So a guy that was probably gonna leave or you're gonna have to overpay, and two guys who were getting ready to just sit on your bench because they weren't performing for you, and you turned that into one definite, I think, definite starter in Emmanuel
Hmm.
quickly, just based on his partnership with Scotty Barnes that we're going to see. Another guy in RJ Barrett who has a Canadian connection and is probably going to start, but is still going to have minutes on this team, that's for sure. So three guys who probably weren't going to stay or be kept into some capacity for two guys that you're going to definitely make use out of. So I think that's about as good as you're going to get. Expiring deals turn into quality players that you're going to keep. We'll see what the quickly contract's going to be from Toronto. They're obviously going to match any offer he gets in the market. But yeah, I think it's as much of a win-win as you can get overall. So I
Hmm.
guess from there, I'm curious to know from you, like you kind of mentioned it quickly may not start for you on this team. Why is that? Why do you think it would make sense to maybe not do that?
Honestly, because I was thinking too, like, how are they gonna immediately start him like when he comes on the team? Because I was thinking too, like, do we want Dennis to kind of come off the like not come off the bench, we'll start and then have quickly kind of create that offense for us to spark off the bench. But honestly, like looking back on it now, I think I would rather have quickly start because we've seen what Dennis can do off the bench. He can help take control of that second unit. So for me, at least, I would kind of just have quickly starting immediately. He again, there's a lot of upside for him. He's good with pick and roll. Again, that was Dennis and Jakob's bread and butter. If he could slide right into that with Jakob, I could see this offense flowing very smoothly. With RJ Barrett too, I'm looking forward to this as well because I guess it was kind of hard for him to develop like behind guys like Julius Randle too. There's a lot of pressure in New York being that high of a draft pick, and then Jalen Brunson, so that might have stunted his development a little bit too. And now that he's coming back home, fresh start, new like comfortable surroundings. I'm just excited to see where this goes. But something I was thinking about too, and I want to ask you about: do you think that the Raptors waited a little bit too long to pull the trigger on OG Anunoby? Do you think there was something better, or do you think this is probably the best we could get?
Again, it depends on like what you're hoping the return to be. Because if you go to
Hmm.
last season and this offseason, you heard the rumors of them being offered 3 first round picks for OG Anunoby, and
Hmm.
that's what you wanted as a fan, then sure you can say they waited too long. Then that's not what they should have got. I'm personally in the boat where getting a young prospect is more impactful for this team
Hmm.
than getting draft picks. Getting a 19-year-old to pair with Scotty Barnes, who's going to try to be in his prime very soon, and he's basically getting there at this point, and some of the other young guys, like I don't think is very impactful because those guys are going to have to learn and develop at a different pace than Scotty Barnes when he's in his prime. So I think you build around Scotty. You can fast track a lot of your rebuild, honestly, if you get this right. Again, we saw it with OKC and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We see it with the Indiana Pacers and Tyrese Halliburton. Like that's what you're trying to go for here. You're banking on Emmanuel quickly being given a bigger opportunity and him being able to do that with Scotty Barnes. And then again, RJ Barrett, I'm still in this camp that he's part of that mix too. I've heard some people say that he was included just as salary filler because he has a pretty big contract. He's going to be making anywhere between 27 to 30 million over the terms of his contract. And I get that's a lot of money, but with the salary cap moving the way it is, it's probably going to be a very reasonable contract by the end of that term. And RJ Barrett is so young that I think he's part of this as well. Like, I'm not saying he's part of the core per se. He's not going to make a big three with the other two guys, but he's going to be important and he's going to develop with those guys on that same timeline. So I think it just makes sense in that regard. I personally see a starting lineup with Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and Jakob Poeltl. And the beauty of it is you kind of have some guard depth now with with RJ and Quickley there. So if Gary Trent Jr. and Dennis Schroeder are having a good night here or there, you can interchange those guys. You can switch them in and out for like different lineup combinations. So I think there's no rigid. You're not rigid here. You can be fluid with that kind of stuff. So I think that's the best part of it too. So that's how I see it, and I think the fit will work overall. Spacing may be an issue with RJ at a time, like I said, but I think the Raptors have a lot more tools to work with now than they did before.
Yeah. Like for me personally, I'm big on RJ Barrett, especially seeing how he played with Team Canada and everything. I think he could really shine in this role. Like again coming home, there's less pressure on him to do well immediately. Like if he just got to find his spot, like whether it's with the starters or if they want to bring him off the bench. I think they'll take a few games to kind of develop that and figure that out too. And with Quickly too, like I think it was Blake that said it on the Raptors podcast. He's about to be the Raptors like most used guard. They're gonna have this guy playing 40 minutes a game. But we'll see how it transpires for them. But honestly, yeah, I would say this is a win-win for both sides too. I'm not like I don't know what the New York fans are saying they got fleeced, saying OG is trash. They don't know what they got, bro. They just got a top 5 wing defender in the NBA, bro.
Yeah, that's what they needed. Their defense over the past 10 games has been awful. They were like 22nd, I think, in the NBA in defensive rating over the past 10 games. They have just been putrid. They haven't been able to stop anything. And OG ANUNOBY should be able to help that. He's not going to fix all their defensive problems, but maybe if Precious can get it together and actually stay on the floor, he'll help with that. And I'll get into Precious and Malachi and their opportunity later on, but I think overall the Knicks got a bit of what they needed, a guy who can still develop a little bit probably offensively. He's still, again, OG ANUNOBY is a pretty capable three-point shooter. He can be decent offensively on certain nights, and he's going to be a stout defender for the most part. And the Raptors got versatility, they got depth, they got a guard, actually 2 guards in my opinion, to grow with Scotty Barnes, and I think that's about as much as you can ask for. Again, like I think it was Sean Woodley who tweeted this out, or it's somebody else that I apologize, that the Raptors basically traded OG ANUNOBY for Emmanuel Quickley, and then they made a second trade for Precious Achiuwa and Malachi Flynn for RJ Barrett in a second. And hell, if you look at that, I think it's a pretty good 2 deals right there. I think Masai Cook, if those were 2 separate trades, let alone one. So I think I'm okay with that overall. The part I want to pivot to now is Pascal Siakam in this situation. There's been a lot of debate, I guess, or speculation about what happens next with Pascal. I see this as 2 different sides. There's the side where you now extend Pascal Siakam because you give yourself the flexibility of him being able to be the vet on this team with these young guys, work with them. Pascal Siakam's obviously still really good. We see in that Boston Celtics game where Pascal and Scotty can work really well together. It didn't result in a win, but they almost got the win and they made that comeback. So you see the potential of him being able to work this out, and putting him on a contract extension does give you some flexibility still. You can trade him in the future if you really need to do that. Or you look at it in the other camp where, like, even with Pascal here, this team is still losing lots of games. Obviously, the Pistons game being the latest example of a really bad loss. And you see how Pascal's value is obviously there as somebody who's very well touted in the NBA. A lot of teams want him. Indiana, again, Atlanta want him. Sacramento might want him. OKC might want him. So his value is still going to be there. And if you can get that much for OG ANUNOBY, maybe you can get something similar for Pascal Siakam, especially for a team that he'll actually want to go to and extend with. So there's the camp that says, screw extending Pascal Siakam. Let's trade him now, and let's completely dive into the youth movement with these young guys. Let's get more young players to go around Scotty Barnes, because maybe Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett don't work out how you want. So let's get a couple more guys. Let's get some of the young guys from Indiana. So there's youth movement, or there's let's ride it out with this retool and let's see how competitive they can be. Which side do you kind of err on here?
I think for me, like, honestly too, and when you look at it too, whether they extend him or they trade him, that is what ultimately decides what the Raptors want to do going forward. For me, at least, and this is not a knock on Siakam. I think we should just trade him for, while his value is high, for some more depth on the team, either bench players or someone as equal value. I don't know exactly who we'd be looking at. Like, I've heard names here and there, but I think right now too, since we pulled the trigger for Quickly and RJ Barrett, like, we want to start building around Scotty. And I think this is probably the best way to do it. I don't think we should sign him to an extension just because, like, even if we do, that means we will kind of not want to win now immediately, but we want to start contending again. And I don't think it's enough to do it. But I do think while his value is high, Siakam can go contribute on an actual team that wants to contend. Don't waste his talents over there. And then we start building up the Raptors. So I think it's a win-win for both sides. You send him somewhere where his talents won't be wasted as much. And then we get some pieces either to build our bench, make our bench stronger, or just help out our starting lineup. Um, but yeah, that's probably where I go down from that. Do you like are you on that side of trade him or do you think we should sign him to an extension?
Yeah, like I kind of like the patient approach a little bit in the sense that like you can extend him and then trade him after this
Mm-hmm.
offseason once you get to a bit more evaluation of Emmanuel quickly and RJ Barrett because maybe those guys come in and then this roster starts playing really, really well with the Pascal Siakam still there. Because everyone's been saying it. Scotty and Pascal can work if you surround them with shooting and
The right
spacing.
players.
And
Mm-hmm.
these guys can provide a bit of that. So maybe that is the case. And then again, come off season when you've extended him already and it's not working, and say maybe IQ and RJ aren't doing the best, you can trade for some more young assets
Mm-hmm.
potentially with an Indiana or an OKC or another team. Granted, it'll be different because Pascal Siakam would be on a bigger contract, so that complicates things a little bit. But I think that I like the patient approach personally, but I wouldn't be against the youth movement either. Again, the youth movement will have some down periods because obviously they'll be losing a lot of games, but hell, they're doing that now. So at least then the vision's clear, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can see either side making sense. I think personally, being a little patient and kind of riding this out because this was a big swing. This was a big move already. It's a lot to process, all that happening at the same time. So I don't necessarily personally want to see them completely blow it up because I think there is an opportunity to kind of now evaluate something in place. Let's see how it would work with shooting and spacing around Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam together, and then kind of go from there. That's the way I see it. And the interesting part of all this too is like, what does Pascal want? There's reports in the offseason that Pascal wants to stick in Toronto. He wants to resign here. Personally, I think that's part of why OG
Mm-hmm.
ANUNOBY was moved before Pascal Siakam. Coming into the season, I was like, OG will fit better with Scotty Barnes, so Pascal Siakam should be the guy on the move first. But then you hear these reports that OG ANUNOBY wanted a bigger role, wanted more money, and then New York was one of the only teams where he would go where he might consider a pay cut. So that was the team he was eyeing. His agency has connections in CAA to the New York Knicks
Mm-hmm.
and their front office. So there's all those rumors. So like he didn't want to stay, it seemed like, and then the Raptors made the move for him, rightfully so. But then if a guy like Pascal does want to stay, maybe it's a good sign to keep a guy like that because how often do the Raptors have somebody that's going to want to stay of that caliber? It could be a good look to show Scotty Barnes that, hey, they take care of their people. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. There's a lot to kind of take out of that. There's a lot to process. But overall, I think I err on the side of it's a win-win. I'm curious to see what it looks like. I think the reporting is saying that ideally, the RJ and IQ are going to be there for the Cavs game, and they're going to be playing in front
Yeah.
of the home fans against Cleveland. So that should be interesting to see. Do you think they both start right away? What's your prediction in that game?
I think I think RJ starts. I think RJ starts immediately because again he probably had like more under his belt, and I think they bring quickly off the bench just to see. It would surprise me if they give quickly the start immediately again over Dennis. But for me, I would just bring quickly off the bench just to kind of get our footing underneath us. I think this whole week coming ahead is going to be Darko figuring out how to get these to work. So don't be surprised if we see after the Cavs game we see both of them starting, and then maybe them
Hmm.
coming off the bench, and then him experimenting a bunch of different lineups. So that like let's see, maybe he starts quickly and then starts Gary Trent, and brings RJ off the bench. So I'm gonna be saying it's gonna be a wild week, and that's why too with the betting ahead segment, like I said, it's gonna be hard to bet on these games because we're still figuring it out. But yeah, I feel like they would start RJ immediately.
Yeah, fair. I'm kind of with you on that. I think RJ starts. I think this Raptors team needs a bit of a jolt, so I want Emmanuel quickly in there for the sole reason that the whole point of this trade was to get Emmanuel quickly and Scotty Barnes together
Hmm.
to get as many reps as possible. So I think like throw him in there. This team isn't winning many games anyways, so you may as well take the risk of Emmanuel quickly starting, in my opinion, and see where it goes from there. But
Hmm.
that pretty much wraps it up on our reactions to the trade itself. I kind of want to shift it towards now the legacy of OG Anunoby. He spent 7 seasons with the Raptors. I think it's time for us to give him a bit of his flowers and kind of just talk about his career. He finishes with 4,676 points. That's 11th in franchise history, fourth in three-pointers made with over 600, and eighth in steals with about 487. So I want to ask you, Kyle, how are you going to remember OG Anunoby as a Raptor?
I'm just gonna remember this guy as the clamp god, bro, the defense god. Like this guy was out here clamping your favorite player, bro. Like this, he was the go-to guy when we ever need to shut someone down, hitting that game winner in the bubble. I just think about just happy memories with him, like just like up and coming memories, thinking like he is something truly special. And the Knicks really did get a special player. Like I know they're like kind of not that high on it right now, but you got arguably a top 5 wing defender in the NBA. Like OG is a really special player. You can't find these guys every now and then. You know, he is something that a lot of teams would die to have, to be able to shoot the three and defend as well as he had. So like I want to thank this guy for everything he's done for the Raptors. You know, he's been loyal to us for so long. You know, he hasn't really complained. He wasn't involved in any drama for us. And you
Yeah.
know, he's always given up 100% for us. Was a champion with the team, and he's gonna go down in history as one of the best Raptors. Like maybe not top 5, but definitely one of the best Raptors.
Yeah, I think there's been conversations around, is he top 10? Some people have him in like the 12 to 15 range. I think we can leave all those debates aside for a little bit just to
Mm-hmm.
celebrate OG Anunoby. I think you're right. He's going to go down as one of the best defenders in Raptors history, that's for sure. At least the most versatile defenders in Raptors history. You got to play with some awesome other defenders and learn from them, and you kind of saw the dividends of that.
Mm-hmm.
That shot in the bubble against Boston when they were down 2-0, he probably avoids them being swept in that series and ended up taking it all the way to 7. So I think it just shows how OG Anunoby was always there when you needed him. Even like the only unfortunate part was that he wasn't able to be there for the championship
Yeah.
run because he had his own personal stuff going on with health and family stuff. So like that sucks. But he was still there. He was still part of the process. I'm really glad he got a championship ring out of it. And his story has always been something of admiration for the Raptors. They drafted him like in the first round later than he probably should have gone because he had injuries in Indiana. They took a shot on him. And then he showed up every day he was there. He had so much fun with guys like Serge Ibaka. You already know his conversations with fashion and scarves and that
Yeah,
kind of
the
stuff.
scarf.
The scarves talk was always great. So I just think he was such a fun, pleasant person to be around. Everyone talking about him says he's a quiet, mild-mannered guy, but he was always very kind, which is so important to have guys like that around, I think. And I just think OG Anunoby he's destined for so much more. And I'm glad to see he's going to be in a place where he can hopefully get that and have more of an opportunity. Hopefully he can live up to it because there's going to be a lot more expectations on him given the way this trade happened, given that they're probably going to pay him a lot of money to do it. Like a $40 million player is no joke. You're going to be expected to drop more than like 16, 17 a night. So let's see what he can do in that situation. I'm just excited for him to have this opportunity. It sounded like he wanted it, so go do what you want and see if you can make the most of it with OG. So I think that's the best way to put it.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I would agree with you too.
Yeah, so OG Anunoby's legacy, I think, is pretty set in Toronto. Some guys, maybe not so much. Precious Achiuwa and Malachi Flynn. I guess the question here is what's next for those guys? Their Raptors tenures weren't really the most well-lived, I'll say. I'm glad Malachi Flynn got to smile more towards the end of the tenure because Darko Rajakovic really wanted him to. Yeah, he's more handsome when he's smiling. And Precious was somebody that Raptors fans always kept saying we saw potential in. And obviously, given that you traded Kyle Lowry for Precious Achiuwa, that matters. Obviously, they're the greatest Raptor of all time, and Goran Dragic is part of that, and also Goran happy retirement, I guess, even though you didn't really like being here in Toronto. But yeah, Precious Achiuwa and Malachi Flynn. What do you think is next for those guys in New York?
I think if they were catching flack in Toronto, they're about to catch 100 times more in New York. Being under those bright lights in Madison Square Garden, the pressure is 10 times because they're like the Knicks want to contend too. Right, like they're in a playoff spot, like so they're gonna have way more eyes on them too. Maybe I feel like Precious might do a little bit better than Flynn in terms of like production wise because I feel like his skill set is a little bit better. But it's hard to say right now too. I feel like they might struggle a little bit. It might take a while to get their footing underneath them. I'm wishing them the best. I'm hoping them the best. I'm hoping they succeed with everything too. But it's gonna be hard to say. Like I know they're gonna bring Flynn off the bench. I saw a meme where it's like Flynn meets Dante DiVincenzo. It was like the Spider-Man meme where they're just pointing at each other. So hopefully Flynn does his thing. Comes off the bench, provides a good spark. But like I think they might struggle for the first like month or two being there, just again with the pressure of playing in New York and what that comes with. Like again playing with the Raptors, they were under pressure too, but we knew like we're not gonna win the chip this season. These guys, they're going all out. They signed Julius Randle, they got Jalen Brunson, now they got OG. They want to win. So it's gonna be hard for them. Maybe they're traded for they're used in other trade packages. Maybe they're actually used on the team. I don't know. What do you think is gonna happen with them?
Yeah, so I think you're completely right. They're gonna face a lot of pressure. If you thought the Toronto market was hard on you, the New York market, the biggest media market in the world, is gonna be like remarkably like harder. And Tom Thibodeau is gonna be remarkably harder. If you thought Darko Rajakovic and Nick Nurse were yanking you fast, wait till Tom Thibodeau benches you for Taj Gibson, Precious Achiuwa, because they brought Taj Gibson back. But like it's funny, but it's also like I want them to look at this as like a great opportunity for them because New York, yes, it's a hard market, but it's also the most viewed market. You want to
Mm,
get attention, you want to be on primetime television, you're gonna get that in New York.
it's
Especially
true.
the true with Malachi Flynn. You have good games in front of all those cameras, people are gonna notice it. But if you have bad games in front of all those cameras, people are also gonna notice it, and you're not gonna play that much. Rest of the Chua, you're going into a situation where Mitchell Robinson is hurt, Isaiah Hardenstein's been banged up, Jericho
Mm,
Sims is out for a long time for the team. They need another big right now.
mm,
So you are going to fit in and get an opportunity right away. So you're also fighting for your next contract here as a restricted free agent. So go out there, show all this potential you can live up to. You said you can be a top 5 defender in the NBA. You have the potential for it. I think we all believe it as well. But you need to like show that you have the decision making process to be out there
mm,
all the time. Like it's not easy to do that, but it's like it's so frustrating when you have all the physical traits, but you don't have any of the mental traits on a consistent
yeah.
basis. You know what I mean? And because the mental things like that's like you can practice that. I can't teach you to be that athletic, but like your coaches can try to teach you to be smarter out there, but it's on you to learn it as well. So if Precious Achiuwa can do that consistently, given the opportunity with the New York Bright Lights and with the injuries that they have, he can really take advantage
Yeah.
of this and earn himself some money and continue his NBA career. And Malachi Flynn, it's a bit of the same thing where like you need to show you can be out there and be a contributor consistently. You had a couple like bursts and spurts here and there, but like it took so much out of the Raptors to get that from you. It took
Hmm.
Darko Rajakovic basically turning you into his like second child for you to have that opportunity to do it. And now you're going to go into a situation where you're fighting against Quentin Grimes and Miles McBride to be the backup point guard. And
Hmm.
I like Malachi Flynn. If you want to be an NBA caliber player, you have to be able to win some of those battles. They just extended Miles McBride, and that's showing Malachi Flynn that hey, you might not be guaranteed a spot here, so fight
Hmm.
for it. You know what I mean? So like Emmanuel quickly, the backup point guard is guard. Like you said, they're gonna need another backup point guard there. And if Malachi Flynn is losing out to Quentin Grimes and Miles McBride, that's not a good look on him.
Yeah.
So go into New York, fight for your opportunity, show you can do stuff consistently, and put in that effort, and then hopefully you can continue your NBA career. Because both these guys are really fighting for their next contracts, in my opinion. So I kind of just hope they can take advantage because there is an opportunity. There's the way I see it.
Yeah, it's the same thing too. Like they're literally playing for their NBA careers at this point because at this point, like they didn't get as many eyes in Toronto because again, a lot of like a main of the NBA market is not watching Toronto games, but they're gonna be watching New York Knicks games. So they're gonna see you play. Like when you get those minutes to shine, you have to shine. You know, like a lot of teams would like a backup guard, and if you can be that, you're gonna have all eyes on you, ready to sign you. Same thing with Precious. Like if you can show off what we know you are capable of and you can do, you will earn those contracts. It's like when how Hassan Whiteside turns into Will Chamberlain every contract year. You know, like if you can turn into and if you can showcase what we've seen glimpses of and we've seen flashes of, especially under the New York media, you're gonna have a bunch of different teams calling up, calling your number, wanting you to come off the bench for them. Precious providing a second big man off the bench for them. Like it just they got to be mentally tough to endure the criticism again from the New York media, the New York fans playing under very stressful games. These are games that they have to win now. It's not like they're not in a feel out process anymore like the Raptors. These are games that they want to win. So as long as again they can remain mentally tough, you know, give them provide proper minutes, provide some good production, I think they'll be set. I think they can secure a proper contract going into the future. But you know, if they do falter, that it sadly it could possibly be it for them. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
just wishing them the best. You know, wishing them all
Yeah.
success.
I think that's what we can do as Raptors fans. Remember what they were able to provide, know that they had
Hmm.
more to offer at the end of the day, and hopefully they can offer that to New York. So we wish them the best. Precious, Malachi, go there with OG, ball out, and see if you can get yourselves another contract in the NBA. We're hoping that for you. But that wraps it up for our trade talks and kind of what's next for those guys. Very excited to see Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett on this team. And again, hopefully they play against the Cavs, but if not, they'll be playing very
Hmm.
soon. And it's going to be exciting for the new era of Toronto Raptors basketball. Maybe even more moves ahead. But I think that wraps up for this. We're going to move on to our next segment now.
Okay, welcome back to Betting Ahead, powered by FanDuel, and this is where we look the schedule ahead for the next week, who the Raptors are playing, what the numbers might say, and how we're feeling. So before I take a look at the schedule, before the break, I told you to take the Raptors money line on the Hornets and the Jazz. Now, how did that go? Well, the Raptors did secure a W against the Hornets, but did go on to lose three straight for the rest of the week. So we just have to take this L on the chin. Anyways, what's coming up for this week? So the Raptors have the Cavs, the Grizzlies, the Kings, and the Warriors. And unfortunately, folks, I would advise taking the money line on the Cavs, the Grizzlies, the Kings, and the Warriors. I think with this new roster shakeup, the Raptors are going to have a lot to figure out, and these teams are going to let them off lightly. You know, all these teams are contending teams, and the Raptors are going to want to figure out lineups. They're going to want to figure out where do we put RJ Barrett, where do we put Emmanuel Quickly. So I think the Raptors will finish off this week 0-4. So now let's get to our Raptors 10K 10 week challenge. And before the break, I said to bet on the Nuggets game, and this is what I said for you guys to do. The must-do legs I would personally do is Scotty for 20 points, Siakam for 15 plus points, and Dennis for 10 plus points. Other legs I would consider is Scotty for over 1.5 threes and Scotty for 6 plus rebounds. And what were the results? Well, we lost the 4th week of the challenge, sadly. Dennis could not score 10 points against the Nuggets. He finished with 7 points, sadly ending our challenge in possibly the worst way. But it's okay. We can always start again. But before I restart the challenge, I'm going to use this week to kind of feel out and figure out how this team is going to run with Quickly and RJ. So now the 10K challenge will hold off until next week. However, I'll give you a same game parlay to bet on. And here's a little parlay you can do for Monday's game against the Cavs. So I do Pascal Siakam 20 plus points, Scotty Barnes 20 plus points, Donovan Mitchell 25 plus points, Scotty Barnes 6 plus rebounds, Scotty Barnes 2 plus made threes. I expect Toronto to come out with a fire lit under them, so expect Scotty and Siakam to be aggressive right off the bat, especially against their loss against the Pistons. I think they're going to come out with a flame right under them, wanting something to prove. Last time they played the Cavs, they didn't play their best, but again, it was still early in the season. They're getting their footing under them, so now that they do have their legs under them, I expect a lot of scoring to happen. Donovan Mitchell is currently also averaging 28 points this season, so 25 points, especially without the team's best defender, is a given. And Scotty has also been on fire from 3 lately, hitting 7 against Boston, 4 against Washington, 4 against Utah. So it'd be safe to say as long as everything is going and flowing well, he should be able to knock a pair down. And that's everything we have for betting ahead.
All right, now that does it for us. Thank you, Kyle. Another week, or I guess 2 weeks in the book in Raptors lands. We hope you're all caught up on everything. I know it's very exciting. A couple of tough losses, actually a lot of tough losses, but the Raptors also made a very, very big trade to kind of shift the direction that they're going in. So exciting to see, exciting for a lot of new stuff ahead. I've been your host, Zulfi Sheikh, joined by Kyle Ramnarine on the Raptors Republic Network. Remember, you can sign up for a subscription. Just $6 a month gets you a lot of exclusive content. And hey, there might be a lot of fun exclusive articles and material coming out recently with this trade, and maybe some more trades to come. Who knows? So with that, just feel free to check out everything on RaptorsRepublic.com. And the last thing we'll say is have a happy new year. Stay blessed, stay safe. We'll be back next week to run it back.